The century, heaven and earth, continues.
January 1969. Only a year left to meet President Kennedy's pledge to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Apollo 8 had been around the moon. The last great challenge was landing on the surface. To do this, NASA designed a highly specialized space vehicle. The lunar module, or the LEM, was NASA's most unusual vehicle because it was the world's first true spaceship, designed to fly outside the Earth's atmosphere.
It looked like a contraption. And this contraption had 4 landing legs with great big pads, shock absorbers. It had ladders. It had a crinkly skin around the outside. It had antennas sprouting all over.
Regardless of how you look at it, it looks terrible. Functionally, it is ideal. It's all you need. You don't need anything streamlined. Everything is stick out. There's no atmosphere in the moon. See, what do you need? Nothing like that.
In March, Apollo 9 took the lunar module into Earth orbit to see how it would perform in space. The LEM undocked and flew 100 miles from the mothership and returned safely. Apollo 10 in May was a full-scale rehearsal for the lunar landing. The spacecraft orbited the moon, and the LEM separated from the command module and made a trial descent down to 50,000 feet above the surface. All that remained for the next mission was an actual landing. The astronauts trained for the lunar descent at a Texas airfield. They flew a vehicle that reproduced the LEM's flying characteristics, a design that had never been used in manned flight before and was very unstable.
It was a risky thing to fly that trainer. One day in 1968, Armstrong was flying an early version, and he was practicing a landing, and it began to gyrate wildly. He was just reaching for the ejection handle when the automatic system kicked in and fired him up and away from the trainer. He came down on his parachute, and by this time the trainer had crashed and burst into flames.
Armstrong developed skills on these test flights that would serve him well when the moment came to land on the moon. July the 16th, 1969, 6 months before the end of Kennedy's deadline to reach the moon. 9:32 a.m. A Saturn V carrying Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins lifted off from Cape Canaveral. 2.5 hours later, Apollo 11 left Earth's orbit. Traveling at speeds up to 24,000 miles an hour, it would take 3 days to make the 240,000-mile journey to the moon. Four days into the flight, on the afternoon of July the 20th, with the Apollo in moon orbit now,
Hello, Eagle, Houston, we're standing by, over.
The lunar module separated from the mothership.
Houston, we see you on the steerable, over. Roger, Eagle, undocked. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings. Roger.
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descended towards the moon's surface.
Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro. Go. Fido. Go. Guidance. Go. Control. Go. Telcom. Go. GNC. Go. Ecom. Go. Surgeon. Go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude 4,200. Houston, you're go for landing, over.
The landing on the moon is a race against the clock in the sense that you're trying to get down, and the whole time you're running out of fuel.
We're go, flight. Okay, we're go. We're go.
It was a controlled fall. The LEM had enough fuel for one attempt, and if they burned that fuel too quickly, they'd crash.
Coming down to 23.
Armstrong noticed that the LEM was about to overshoot its landing point and was heading directly for a field of boulders. Armstrong switched to manual control and quickly performed an evasive maneuver. He then flew 5 miles across the lunar surface, searching for a landing spot that was smooth.
100 feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward. There's looking good, down a half.
60. Roger.
6 forward.
60.
Give the crew a 60-second call.
60 seconds. Lights on.
It's still obvious they're still above the surface, and they're scooting horizontally, trying to find a landing point.
Picking up some dust.
We get now down to 30 seconds fuel remaining, Colin. You're now starting to realize this is a horse race. It's going to be close right to this last second.
30 seconds. 30 seconds. Forward. Contact.
And it then takes a second to realize the crew is actually going through the shutdown sequence.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
And we had somewhere about between no less than 7, no more than 17 seconds of fuel remaining at the time we shut these engines down.
And we're getting a picture on the TV. Okay. You got a good picture, huh? Roger, we copy. That's a pretty good little jump.
And all of a sudden you could see on the television, it wasn't a very clear picture, but you could see motion. And then finally you could identify legs coming out. And you could see the whole body go down.
I'm going to step off the limb.
And then you could see the actual step on the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was just an absolutely glorious, unbelievable moment.
The sense of accomplishment just, I think, overtook everybody in terms of something that we had all worked together for years.
There will only be one first mission from the Earth to another world. That moment was the beginning of a story that never ends.
This was about what humans do. Humans like to explore. And this was exploration on a grand scale. The whole world participated. It was the peacetime event of the century.
Over the course of 6 Apollo missions, 12 Americans walked on the lunar surface. They spent 80 hours driving the lunar buggy to distant craters and mountains, conducting scientific experiments. They brought back to Earth 836 pounds of rock and soil. It was indeed a giant leap for mankind, but it was only the beginning. It was extraordinary to watch man walk and sometimes play on the moon. But something strange happened after man got there. Americans, for the most part, became less interested in space exploration. Most, but not all. Finally, in this hour, we're going to put ourselves in the hands of some young scientists and engineers who take us deeper and farther out there than most of us can even imagine. When we come back.
This century, heaven and earth continues.
1-0, and liftoff of the Delta rocket with Mars Pathfinder, and the vehicle has cleared the tower.
By December 1996, 27 years after the moon landing, America's space explorers were so much deeper into space. The Pathfinder mission went 309 million miles to Mars to deliver the small unmanned Sojourner rover, which explored the Martian surface. This was 1,200 times farther away than the moon.
Sojourner made Mars accessible because it was our eyes and our feet on Mars, and we could move and look around and explore more than we had ever been able to do before with robotic vehicles.
When you see this Martian terrain, you think, I see a horizon, I see rocks, I see orange-red soil. I'm in Utah, but you're not in Utah. You're in an ancient floodplain on a world 110 million miles away, and you realize that suddenly the technological tendrils of Earth have reached out and brought these images back to us. It makes us feel infinitely larger and infinitely smaller simultaneously.
The Martian landscape was at one time more like Earth. For example, surging water scarred large areas of its surface. Valles Marineris is a canyon so large it could hold the entire Grand Canyon.
Mars was a planet that billions of years ago enjoyed an epoch where liquid water flowed on its surface. It is bone dry now, freeze dried. How did that happen? Is there any lesson that we can learn by studying Mars about the Earth?
If you care about how we got here, or why we're here, or how long we might be here, or what might happen to us in the future, then the planets can give us an idea about that.
Until this century, it was assumed the solar system was dead, unchanging.
The solar system is alive. It is continuing to change. It is not something which was created 4.5 billion years ago, and we're seeing it today as it was. We knew that the Earth has changed, but it turns out that even the small worlds in the solar system have changed since their formation and are continuing to change.
The Voyager missions have flown hundreds of millions of miles beyond Mars, out beyond the most distant planets of our solar system. They have sent back some of the most startling images of the entire space age. The rings of Saturn were revealed in stunning new detail.
Suddenly we found out that there were hundreds of thousands of rings around Saturn. And those rings weren't all circular. Some of them were elliptical, and nobody understood how that could be. Some of them looked like they were braided, and nobody understood how that can be. What people had thought of before those pictures as being just this nice, simple demonstration of the way that objects march around in Newtonian orbits around Saturn, instead suddenly became this incredible gravitational ballet with all sorts of wonderful effects that people did not really fully understand.
Voyager also captured the violent drama of Jupiter. This planet is so massive, as large as all the other planets combined, that it generates its own heat, adding fuel to its hurricane-like storms. The biggest is called the giant red spot.
That storm system is 2 to 3 Earths across, and it's just a storm system. What we discovered with Voyager was that that was just the largest of literally dozens of huge hurricane-like storm systems that form and disappear and then reform in Jupiter's giant atmosphere.
Voyager discovered what we could not know from Earth: 3 completely new moons. Jupiter has 16, not 13. We thought that one moon, Io, was a cold, lifeless rock.
And now all of a sudden, out in the outer solar system, here's this dumpy little moon orbiting around Jupiter, and it's got volcanoes going off all over the place. And these volcanoes are so amazing, blasting material out across the surface of the planet, so prolific that the entire surface of the planet remakes itself every few years.
But I don't really think people expected it to look the way it did, and to have multiple volcanoes going off all at the same time, and to have the plumes extruded hundreds of kilometers up above the surface, and for it to look as strange as it looks. It's a very strange place.
And now the Voyager spacecraft have gone beyond our own solar system and are heading towards interstellar space. Out there between the stars, NASA believes they'll report back what they can for perhaps another 15 or 20 years. Gazing out beyond even these spacecraft is the Hubble Space Telescope. Positioned in the Earth's orbit, it is the most powerful optical telescope exploring space today. In time, the Hubble telescope may help us comprehend the most fundamental questions of the universe. This is the Eagle Nebula, an immense cloud of gas and dust where stars and planets are being formed.
The Eagle Nebula is a reasonably nearby stellar nursery. This particular dust cloud, the largest one, is something like 1 light year tall, 6 trillion miles. So this is an immense region interior to which our stars are being born and planets are being born.
You look at that picture, and in fact people do look at that picture and say, wow, who painted that? And the answer is nobody painted that. That's something that's really honest to goodness out there. That's part of the universe that we live in.
The Hubble telescope is a unique tool, helping us to understand the very origin and evolution of the universe and our place in it.
There are more galaxies in the sky than there are stars in our own galaxy. Each one of those galaxies being its own collection of billions or tens of billions or hundreds of billions of stars, each one of which is the result of the same processes that led to the formation of our sun and our Earth and our life. Given that, it seems very unlikely that life has not found a foothold somewhere else in the universe as well.
We are all from exploding stars. Those are the things that make the carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen and other elements. Now, that's happened throughout the universe. To have that just something special here, well, it's impossible. It's just like it's impossible that this is the only star in the universe, our sun.
And I think exploring space, looking out beyond that into our solar system, is going to get us to the point of what is this all about? Why are we here?
Why are we here? How did we get here? The eternal questions. The first step on the moon, as awesome as it seemed at the time, only encouraged us to go farther.
If we decided to go to the moon and achieve that in less than half a generation, there's no reason we couldn't make a similar choice and travel to Mars, travel to one of the moons of Jupiter, even travel outside the solar system. Apollo gave us confidence.
I believe that we have to find some way to express ourselves as a world, and I believe that is through the continuing process of exploration and discovery.
We're about to enter a new millennium in which we can say with confidence that people will walk on other planets, and they might even go to other stars. And as long as humanity exists, we'll be going out into space.
40 years after President Kennedy launched America on a voyage of discovery, there is no turning back.
Just as the Renaissance changed forever humankind's perspective of itself, space age is also changing forever our perspective of ourselves. We will never again be able to view ourselves as the very parochial little creatures who live within a world defined by what's over the next hill. We're part of the universe, and you can't take that back.
The century continues.
So that's our first episode. But as we said, it's been an extraordinary century, and there's more. In Ultimate Power on Thursday, a cautionary tale of evil rising and the race to beat Hitler to the secrets of the bomb.
We're doing the work of the devil, but I never had any hesitation about building it or using it.
Two stories about democracy and the fight against evil. And later on the century, Memphis Dreams. A young truck driver gyrates and changes the culture.
He was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen in my life. He was just gorgeous.
I may not get there with you.
And Martin Luther King's final days in the struggle for change.
The sign, it didn't say peace, it didn't say freedom, it didn't say justice. It said, I am a man.
In no man's land, America goes to war to end all war.
Heroism was dead from that moment, because it didn't help you to survive whether you were heroic or not.
And ends its longest war by abandoning its friends.
When the helicopter left the roof of the embassy, I was extremely, extremely upset that if I'd tried to talk, I would have cried.
In Coming Apart, America is on the brink of collapse, but finds someone to believe in.
This nation is asking for action, and action now.
And the Cold War comes to Hollywood.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
I have replied to that. You have no right to ask me that.
The witness is through. Stand away.
You might say with bravado, oh, they're not going to do anything to us. But you weren't sure.
And looked down and suddenly realized there were lots of people. And they were even coming over the walls.
The evolution of revolution. What was it that made these men and women so angry?
That was the first time I heard death to America, death to the hostages.
The story of how Hitler got there and the ultimate power of the bomb on Thursday. I hope you'll join us. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
The Century, brought to you by Genuine Chevrolet, the cars more Americans trust. To purchase a video cassette or transcript of The Century, phone 1-800-CALL-ABC. And you can read more about this remarkable time in The Century, published by Doubleday and sold in bookstores everywhere. Also, look for The Century audiobook edition, available on compact disc and audio cassette. The Century features music from The Prayer Cycle, the new CD by Jonathan Elias.
The century continues.
So that's our first episode. But as we said, it's been an extraordinary century, and there's more. In Ultimate Power on Thursday, a cautionary tale, Rehearsing, and the race to beat Hitler to the secrets of the bomb.
We're doing the work of the devil. But I never had any hesitation about building it or using it.
Two stories of democracy and the fight against evil. And later on the century, Memphis Dreams. A young truck driver gyrates and changes the culture.
He was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen in my life. He was just gorgeous.
I may not get there with you. And Martin Luther King's final days in the struggle for change.
The sign, it didn't say peace, it didn't say freedom, it didn't say justice. It said, I am a man.
In no man's land, America goes to war to end all war.
Heroism was dead from that moment, because it didn't help you to survive whether you were heroic or not.
And ends its launched war by abandoning its friends.
When the helicopter left the roof of the embassy, I was extremely, extremely upset that if I'd tried to talk, I would have cried.
In Coming Apart, America is on the brink of collapse, but finds someone to believe in.
This nation is asking for action, and action now.
And the Cold War comes to Hollywood.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
I have replied to that. You have no right to ask me that.
The witness is through. Stand away.
You might say with bravado, oh, they're not going to do anything to us. But you weren't sure.
And looked down and suddenly realized there were lots of people. And they were even coming over the walls.
The evolution of revolution. What was it that made these men and women so angry?
That was the first time I heard death to America, death to the hostages.
The story of how Hitler got there and the ultimate power of the bomb on Thursday. I hope you'll join us. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
The Century, brought to you by Genuine Chevrolet. The cars more Americans trust. To purchase a video cassette or transcript of The Century, phone 1-800-CALL-ABC. And you can read more about this remarkable time in The Century, published by Doubleday and sold in bookstores everywhere. Also, look for The Century audiobook edition, available on compact disc and audio cassette. The Century features music from The Prayer Cycle, the new CD by Jonathan Elias.